The S&P 500 was little changed, and the rest of the market posted small gains Tuesday as Wall Street sits on its hands, waiting for earnings season and for what's next in efforts to impeach President Trump. China's electric vehicle market is seen booming this year, with Tesla's Model Y forecast to shake up the market thanks to aggressive pricing that undercuts German rivals. U.S. President Donald Trump, in his first remarks before the press since December 8th, slammed big tech companies Tuesday, saying they were doing a horrible thing to the country. These and more on TFT News. I'm Mike Wallace, and you are watching TFT News. General Motors on Tuesday presented animation of a futuristic flying Cadillac, a self-driving vehicle which takes off and lands vertically and carries the passenger above the streets and through the air as part of a digital presentation at the annual Consumer Electronics Show.
The vertical takeoff and landing drone, or VTOL, is GM's first foray into aerial mobility. You've been at the office and now you need to get to a meeting across town. The VTOL meets you on the roof and drops you at the vertiport closest to your destination. It uses a 90 kilowatt-hour EV motor to power 4 rotors, as well as air-to-air and air-to-ground communications. As a passenger, it represents personal space and a panoramic view of the world passing beneath you, and is a glimpse of what autonomy and Cadillac luxury might look like in the not-too-distant future. We have other concepts coming, including a luxurious 2-seater designed for you and someone very special. Each concept reflecting the needs and wants of the passengers at a particular moment in time, and GM's vision of the future of transportation.
The S&P 500 was little changed, and the rest of the market posted small gains Tuesday as Wall Street sits on its hands, waiting for earnings season and for what's next in efforts to impeach President Trump.
Wall Street appeared to be in a holding pattern Tuesday as investors wait for the start of earnings season and as the drama in Washington gave an additional reason to pause. Democrats moved closer to impeaching President Trump for inciting the deadly rampage at the Capitol last week. The Dow rose 60 points, the S&P 500 nudged up a point, the Nasdaq gained 36. While it may be hard, Randy Watts, Chief Investment Officer of O'Neill Global Advisors, says investors should look past the political turmoil and focus on the bigger financial picture.
I think the market's really looking forward. It's really focused on 3 things: the economy, how big that additional stimulus is going to be, and what happens with COVID. And I think the market is making a bet that by the end of this year, there is going to be more stimulus, the economy is going to be a lot stronger, and COVID is going to be ramping down. So I think investors would be better served to focus on those things looking forward than basically looking at the last administration.
That doesn't mean the future is going to be bright for all sectors. Investors fear tech companies like Twitter and Facebook are likely to face more regulatory scrutiny, with Democrats controlling the top 2 branches of government. Social media names were among the weakest for the second day in a row. Twitter and Facebook were both down more than 2%. Looking at some good news, shares of General Motors rose to their highest since coming out of bankruptcy 10 years ago. CEO Mary Barra outlined plans for GM's first electric commercial vans, which will be delivered to FedEx later this year.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday disavowed responsibility for his supporters' violent invasion of the U.S. Capitol last week and said his remarks before the siege were totally appropriate.
Always have to avoid violence.
Facing a second impeachment on a charge of incitement of insurrection and calls for his removal from office, President Donald Trump on Tuesday offered no apologies for his speech urging supporters to march on the U.S. Capitol and fight.
We fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
And he took no responsibility for his supporters' violent invasion of the Capitol that led to the deaths of 6 people, including Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick.
So if you read my speech, and many people have done it, and I've seen it both in the papers and in the media, on television, it's been analyzed, and people thought that what I said was totally appropriate. And if you look at what other people have said, politicians at a high level, about the riots during the summer, the horrible riots in Portland and Seattle and various other places, That was a real problem, what they said. But they've analyzed my speech and my words and my final paragraph, my final sentence, and everybody to the T thought it was totally appropriate. Okay, thank you.
Trump's disavowal of responsibility on Tuesday was his first public statement since he released a video on Thursday to condemn the violence at the Capitol and to commit to a peaceful transition of power. Several media outlets later reported that Trump regretted posting the video. House Democrats plan to impeach Trump on Wednesday unless he resigns or is removed by his vice president and cabinet before then, which would make him the only U.S. president ever to be impeached for a second time.
China's electric vehicle market is seen booming this year, with Tesla's Model Y forecast to shake up the market thanks to aggressive pricing that undercuts German rivals.
Electric vehicle sales look set to zoom in China this year. Industry and analyst forecasts predict a rise of 30 to 40% for so-called new energy vehicles, or NEVs. That includes plug-in hybrids and fuel cell cars. The boom would follow tepid gains in 2020, seen at about 8%, when health worries kept consumers at home. Now Tesla's Model Y looks like emerging as the big disruptor. The company this month started selling locally built units of the mid-sized SUV, and it's priced them about a tenth less than comparable gasoline-powered vehicles. At about $52,000, the model undercuts rivals from Mercedes, Audi and BMW. All told, industry sources say Tesla is expected to make about 500,000 vehicles in China this year, more than 3 times the total in 2020. Its German rivals all have their own new models, however, potentially adding to the boom. And homegrown players are stepping up too. Local brands like NIO and XPeng are also expanding manufacturing capacity. What happens will be closely watched. China is the world's biggest car market and accounts for about half of global EV sales. Beijing wants all new energy vehicles to account for a fifth of sales by 2025, up from 5% now. It's extended electric vehicle subsidies by 2 years to help hit that target. If the forecast boom materializes, that could see NEV sales hit about 1.8 million units this year.
The Trump administration said on Tuesday it is releasing millions of COVID-19 vaccine doses it had been holding back for second shots and urged states to offer them to all Americans over age 65 or with chronic health conditions.
With vaccinations across the country off to a painfully slow start, the Trump administration on Tuesday announced sweeping changes.
The next phase has several components.
The new measures include releasing millions of coronavirus vaccine doses held back for second shots and expanding the pool of people who are eligible. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar.
We are telling states they should open vaccinations to all people over age 65 and over, and all people under age 65 with a comorbidity with some form of medical documentation as defined by governors.
Secretary Azar also said the administration would deploy teams to mass vaccination sites should states request assistance. Most states prioritized healthcare workers and nursing home staff and residents for their first vaccine deliveries, which began last month. And last week, the CDC made clear states can move on to the next priority group, people 75 and older and essential workers, without finishing that first round of inoculations. But fewer than 20 states have done so. California this week will turn the Disneyland theme park known as the happiest place on earth into a massive COVID-19 vaccination site. And in Florida,
this site here,
Governor Ron DeSantis, who has prioritized inoculating those 65 and older from the start, unveiled a new vaccination effort at the Villages, a sprawling retirement community.
Is going to be able to handle between 800 and 1,000 vaccines a day.
As of Monday, nearly 9 million Americans had been given their first dose, far fewer than the 25 million total doses distributed to states by the U.S. government. The vaccinations have yet to make a dent in the health crisis, as the pandemic claimed on average about 3,200 lives nationwide each day over the last week.
U.S. President Donald Trump, in his first remarks before the press since December 8th, slammed big tech companies Tuesday, saying they were doing a horrible thing to the country.
U.S. President Donald Trump blasted big tech companies Tuesday after their unprecedented crackdown on conspiracy theorists and fringe groups in an urgent effort to prevent more unrest, including silencing the president himself. In his first remarks to the press since the attack on the Capitol, Trump said big tech is doing a horrible thing.
But I think big tech has made a terrible mistake and very, very bad for our country. And that's leading others to do the same thing. And it causes a lot of problems and a lot of danger. Big mistake. They shouldn't be doing it. But there's always a counter move when they do that. I've never seen such anger as I see right now, and that's a terrible thing.
His remarks came after online platforms and social media companies further clamped down on Monday. PayPal has blocked GiveSendGo, a Christian crowdfunding site that had helped raise funds for people who attended last week's rally in Washington when supporters of President Donald Trump stormed the Capitol. Amazon and Twitter went after QAnon, the group that has pushed conspiracies on social media, such as the baseless claim that Trump is secretly fighting a cabal of child sex predators. Amazon said it's working to remove some QAnon products from its online marketplace. The retailer's policies prohibit offensive items or other inappropriate content. Twitter said it had suspended more than 70,000 accounts since Friday that were primarily dedicated to sharing QAnon content, citing an increased risk of harm. Meanwhile, Airbnb will now ban users who were involved in criminal activity in storming the Capitol. The online home rental firm also said it'll cancel reservations if it confirms that guests are associated with a hate group. The latest moves follow a flurry of measures taken by tech giants beginning last week when Twitter permanently suspended Trump's personal account. Facebook, Google, Apple, and Amazon have also taken their strongest actions against Trump to limit his reach. Speaking during the Reuters Next conference, Facebook's operations chief Sheryl Sandberg said the world's largest social network had no plans to lift its block on Trump's accounts.
These are the latest from around the world. I'm Mike Wallace, and this is TFT News.